everyone, and welcome to another episode of Get Tech Smart. I am your host, Flo Nicholas, resident right here in Hudson, New Hampshire. And the name of the show is Get Tech Smart because that's what we're doing here. I'm bringing guests in from various sectors of the tech world, and I'm learning. And while I'm learning, I'm helping you learn as well. So we're up to date with all the great things that are going on in the tech sector. So I'm going to jump right in because one area that I'm seeing is getting really a lot off, one, federal funding, and two, a lot of interest is the green tech sector. And if you recall, I had Selectman Brett Gagnon here, and we spoke with him and his father about the importance of green tech. And one of the things we spoke about was solar panels. So that's why today I invited one of our guests from a company called BlueWave, and his name is Alan Robertson. I am so happy to have you here.
Thanks
because this is kind of like a little bit different, right? So I spoke to you before and I told you that I had two guests on here and we just talked about various aspects of green technology. And this is a little different because you actually work for BlueWave, which is a company that actually does the installation of solar panels. So I think today our audience are in for a treat because we get a more pretty much broader perspective of the industry, just from the cost to what it takes to install to are you even ready to install? Why should I install? Can I afford it? Why is it so important? So let's dig right in and talk a lot and dig real deeper into the world of solar panels.
Yeah, sure. There's so much to talk about in solar. There's many different parts of the industry that we touch on, and then I've been touching on over the last 11 years or so. So happy to chat about all of it. The finance topic is always a hot one that people want to chat about because people don't understand how this all works, and they're looking down the street and they're seeing a lot of people go solar, so they know it does work. But yeah, happy to talk about any one piece of it.
Okay, so you know what? Let's first of all start with what are solar panels? Because I think one of the things, people, like you said, you drive down the street and they're becoming, more common, and we're seeing them on roofs. And there's some people who are doing the ground mount installation. So let's just get the basic understanding of what solar panels are and why are they important right now.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different types of solar arrays. So you can see the big fields sometimes if you're driving down the street, and that's connected to the power lines on the street. And it's kind of like a utility, kind of like how in this area, like Eversource, you'd buy your power from them. You can buy your power from some of those solar arrays on in big fields. Then you see commercial arrays on top of roofs, or commercial arrays even sometimes on the ground. And then you see residential arrays, right? On homes. From an equipment perspective, they're all very similar. So the solar panels you see on a roof for a house is not much different. In fact, down to its core and in its chemistry, it's identical to the stuff you'd see in a big field. So the stuff that we use for commercial arrays, more or less identical to the stuff that you see for residential arrays. The purpose for those different types of pieces of equipment is very different. For the stuff on top of a house, you're offsetting your electricity bill.
Right.
The stuff in a field, like I said, it's like a utility. So it's giving cheap green energy to thousands of homes instead of just one home. So it comes in different shapes and sizes, but at the end of the day, it's all very, very similar in nature.
Okay. So, one of the things I hear people say who do have solar panels, it's like, oh, the electric company is paying me, you know? And so for, I think a lot of people, they still struggle to really understand that. Like, how are you getting money back? How, can you kind of explain that a little bit about how that works?
There's a bunch of different financial reasons to go solar. So if I own a bunch of land, I can rent that land to a company like BlueWave, and then we go in and we install an array. So what we do is we pay them every month or every quarter just to have us be there, like we're a tenant and we're just paying rent.
Okay.
Then for a homeowner, you can put it on your roof and it offsets your electricity bill. So instead of paying the utility, let's call it $100 a month, you might pay a loan for the solar array, or you might pay cash for it, and then your bill goes away. It's a common misconception that the utility pays you to go solar. It's not like you can retire and quit your day job and just put a bunch of solar panels on your roof, but it's avoided costs, so you no longer have to pay the utility. And the name of the game is to have your loan payment, if you're taking out a loan, be less than your utility bill would have been otherwise.
Yeah, And one of the other things that I see that comes up a lot is that fear of having that equipment on your roof, right? Because it's like, oh, but what if I have to replace my roof? Then what happens? And I'll be honest, that's usually what I say, because when you're walking through Sam's Club or BJ's, or even like door to door, you have the salespeople that come, and that's usually like one of my arguments. It's like, oh, but if I have to replace my roof, then I have to take it off. Then somebody's got to come back and put it back on. So in my mind, being a very frugal person, the numbers start going tick, 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 tick in my head. So can we kind of talk about that?
Sure, yeah. It's funny you should mention that, because a good friend of mine, one of my best friends growing up, knows I'm in the solar industry, obviously, and he's thinking about going solar. And he called me, he said, my roof is 20 years old. Should I replace my roof? My answer was, yeah, you should replace your roof. It's not super costly to have a company come out and take the panels off and put them back on, but it's not $5, but it's not $5,000. Right. So I'd highly recommend, if you have to replace your roof, to do it at the same time that you're doing the solar. Often the solar companies either are roofers themselves and can do the roof for you, or they know somebody because they work with a lot of roofers. So having it done at the same time is not a bad idea. Full disclosure, I'm not a tax expert, but there are potentially tax incentives to do the roof at the same time. You can get part of that roof paid for when you go to file your taxes at the end of the year. So there's a whole host of reasons you want to get out of the way, but the number one reason why you'd want to do it before solar is it costs money to have them come out and remove the array. But the number one thing that breaks down a roof when it weathers over time is sunlight, it's wind, it's rain, it's hail, it's snow. And if you're putting solar panels over the roof, it actually protects it from the environment. So they actually last a lot longer than you would have otherwise. So it just because the roof is, let's call it 5 years old or something, doesn't mean you have to replace it, because like I said, it'll protect it. But if your roof is nearing the end of its life, it's got 5 years left maybe, you'd want to get that taken care of.
So when you're doing an analysis, like, a homeowner is like, hey, I'm interested, I want solar panels. Would that be the first thing that you kind of take a look at to see is like, hey, let's take a look at your roof first, can it even, hold? Does it have the structural integrity to hold those solar panels?
Yeah, it's usually the first question I ask. Okay. If the array is going, the solar system is going on top of a roof, it's, top 1 or 2 questions. How old's the roof? And sometimes you can see on Google, like Google Earth and Google Imagery, you can see
hole in the
that it's old. Yeah, you take a looking at it, and you can tell it needs to be replaced. But it's usually one of the first things I ask is how old's the roof.
That's great. So I've seen people put them, instead of on the roof, I've seen the ground mounted. Is one option really better than the other? Is one option even cheaper than the other? Like, what should people look at when they're taking a look at which one to go with? Yeah,
if you're a homeowner, usually it's cheaper to put it on the roof. There's less equipment that you need. You're not digging holes and trenching and all that fun stuff. And the racking solution, but the stuff that the solar panels connect to is called racking. The racking for a ground-mounted array there's a lot more of it. So, and steel prices these days are not going down.
No, they're not.
You want to avoid those costs as best as you can. So if you have a roof that's pointed south, which is what's ideal, so it gets the most sun throughout the day, I would use that roof plane first because you're going to save some money on equipment. But if you don't have any roof space and you've got a yard, it's really great to put it on the ground. One big benefit for putting it on the ground, even though it's slightly more costly, is you can orient it just perfectly. Okay. The solar systems like to be pointed south, and depending on where you are in the country, the tilt of the panels will vary, but there is an optimal orientation and pitch of the solar system. So when you're putting it on the ground, you can actually choose what direction it's pointing in and the tilt of the solar panel. So that's an added benefit for putting it on the ground. Yeah. And it's a little more costly. It'll produce more power at the end of the day.
But once it's you mentioned like the tilt and the positioning. So once it's installed, like that's a one-time thing, right? I don't have to, climb on my roof and constantly, do modifications to like, honey, is it okay now? So I mean, it's a silly question, but some people might think, oh my God, he's talking about tilting. Does that mean that when they're done, I have to be out there moving the equipment around?
Not a silly question at all. It's actually a question I get quite often, especially here in New England. People ask, do I need to clean them or do I need to to move the snow off of them if it snows? And the answer is a firm no. You don't have to change anything. These solar systems are set it and forget it, especially for residential systems that are on your roof or in your yard. They're made to not be touched. In fact, we used to have back when I worked for a company about 10 years ago that primarily we did residential solar systems. We used to have to put a binder together and leave it behind for frequently asked questions so the homeowner can kind of flip through and remind themselves what they need to do. There was a sheet in there for operations and maintenance. What do I need to do? And basically the whole sheet said, don't touch the solar system.
Don't touch it, yeah.
You don't need to. There are moving arrays that you can have in your yard. So it sits on a pole and actually follows the sun throughout the day. And sometimes those things do need some ongoing maintenance. There's gears in there, and you need to make sure they're operating correctly. But the homeowner never has to do that. It's all covered in warranty usually, and a professional will come out and check on it once every handful of years.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things, like just being in the tech sector, is that technology is constantly evolving, right? It's like you get something today, and then the company has all the crazy mad scientists looking for ways to make things better. So the next question, I don't know if I'm being obvious here, will be, how often do you have to replace, right? As you guys upgrade your equipment and you make it more efficient, make it better, what does the homeowner have to do? Do they have to do anything?
Yeah, definitely not. And common misconception, unlike sort of the cell phone I've got in my bag over there, which the technology I feel like changes as soon as I walk out of the store with a new phone. Unlike that, solar panels haven't changed much over the years. Like I said, I've been doing this for just over 10 years. And from when I started till today, not much as far as the solar panels are concerned have changed. The geometry and how they're all put together has changed slightly over the years, but the efficiency and how they operate hasn't changed much. So solar arrays are warranted for 20 years, and when we're doing something in a field for like a power plant, we rent the land for 20 plus years, usually 30, 40 years. So we may re-energize. The panels do break down over time, so we may re-energize at the end of the first 20 years or so. And the inverters, the stuff that takes the solar power and turns it into usable energy, those break every here and there over the years, but they're warranted for 20 years. So we're not doing much. You may, like I said, re-energize at the after decades, but you're not really touching it for a long time.
Yeah. So you keep mentioning these somewhat solar farms that you have. So what's the purpose of leasing and that land and putting solar panels on it? Like, I guess what community is that serving?
A bunch of different ones. So what BlueWave, the company I work for now, what we specialize in is dual use solar or agrivoltaics. And there's no Webster dictionary definition for agrivoltaics. It comes in different shapes and sizes, but dual use is exactly that, two uses. The first primary use being solar power, and the second use being growing stuff. So a lot of the solar systems that I oversee the development of these days are on farmland. And, and often we're trying to continue or expand the agricultural activity on site. For instance, we've got a project in Rockport, Maine, that's over a blueberry field, and we're custom making farming equipment to farm the blueberries.
Oh wow!
We're working on a couple of experimental agricultural studies with local seed producers and universities. We've got a partnership with the University of Maine and University of Massachusetts. So a lot of the projects that I work on benefit the agricultural community, and often what's happening is either the farmland needs a break, it needs to rest for a bit, and they just need to figure out how to monetize it. And growing something, it's not an option, or due to various types of climate change and the resulting negative implications from that, like the land's drying out and things, so they can't do what they have historically done. So they'll create a new revenue stream and a new income from putting a solar array there. So often the people who are hosting those big fields, that's what they're looking to do, is let their farmland rest or add supplemental income so they can keep the farm in the family or something like that.
Yeah, that's actually absolutely fascinating that you mentioned that, because a lot of the guests that I have come on the show, a lot of the people that I hear that they're working on is in the agricultural sector. So I'm really quite impressed that they're taking on, like, farmers are really intrigued by technology and they're willing to pretty much experiment. So it's very fascinating that you mentioned that. One of the things I've also heard about is like community solar panels. Can we talk a little bit more about that as well? Because I just kind of want to get a better understanding, because it almost seems like it's an additional option to choosing more efficient energy versus, going the like EverSource route, for example.
Yeah, definitely. So most of the time when you see solar arrays in big fields, it is community solar. So I'd mentioned that you can put solar panels on your roof. And if your roof isn't great, you can put them in the yard. But what happens if your roof isn't great and you don't have a yard? You can subscribe to a community solar array. And basically what they're doing is they're putting a bunch of solar panels out in the field somewhere nearby, usually within the same utility. So if you have, let's say, EverSource or something, like I mentioned before, the solar system has to be located within the EverSource territory. And then you subscribe to it. So you buy solar credits at a discount. So you're still saving money, and you don't have to put it on your roof or in your yard.
Right.
Often a lot of folks that are subscribing to community solar arrays are renters that can't, since they don't own the house, they can't put solar on it. So it's a good way for people, like I said, that don't have the room for it or don't own, and they can still participate in clean energy. All
right. So now how does that? Let's talk a little more about that, because I'm pretty sure people are like, well, wait a minute. So what happens? So who do I pay? Because I'm used to paying EverSource. So how does that work if I'm renting from the solar community? So can we just clarify exactly how that works in terms of like the bill-wise, where they're getting their bill?
Yeah, there's a few different ways it works, and it varies depending on what state you're in. So if someone's listening to this and they've gone community solar, their experience may differ from what I'm about to explain. But usually what you're doing is you're buying bill credits at a discount, like I'd mentioned before. So the solar system in the field will produce, let's call it $1,000 worth of bill credits. And then I'm buying a portion of that. I'll buy $100 of those bill credits, but I'll buy them for $90. So I'm saving 10% in this case. And those bill credits just show up on my utility bill. So I'm going to pick on EverSource again. So if I'm paying my EverSource bill, I'm going to still continue to pay my EverSource bill, but I'll have now a line item on there for credits. And those credits came from the community solar system.
Okay, that's a good breakdown explanation. So that's definitely something to consider, and it's something that I'm also seeing that there's an increase on communities trying to explore that.
Yeah, and we have to have policy to do this. Not every utility, every state allows for us to put solar panels in a field and create these bill credits. So what we do is we follow the markets and try to help educate lawmakers and legislators to help produce responsible community solar policy. So, for instance, like I said, Maine's got good community solar policy. Massachusetts does. New Hampshire's worked on it here and there. So, so you can still do stuff, but not at a scale that we normally operate at. We work in New Jersey and New York and so on and so forth. But we have to have the policy to allow us to do that.
Right.
So most states are now catching on, and legislators are getting wise to how this all works and the benefit to the community and to the environment. And more importantly, a lot of states now have goals to hit.
Right.
Clean energy targets by certain dates, and solar is a great way to meet those targets.
Yeah, my research has been showing that demand of wanting to reach those targets and just wanting to be more green, right? So I think I'm seeing a lot more federal funding that's coming in, and as you mentioned before, yes, there are tax credits that are available for people who are going green, which is great. Now, I mean, the technology, as I said earlier, is constantly evolving. Is there any like solar panel windows? Like if I don't want to have equipment on the ground and I don't want to have equipment on my roof, what alternatives are available, if any, or coming soon on the market that we should be aware of? Yeah,
like I said, not much is changing from a technology perspective over the last decade. But where I am seeing folks get creative is how they integrate solar cells or solar panels into building materials and into new construction. For instance, I'm working on a project right now that is a parking canopy, so it's providing cover for the people parking underneath it, and so the cars don't get hot in the summer, and they don't get snow covered in the winter, and you don't get wet when it's raining out. You can walk underneath these things.
Yeah.
But the roof deck is not just steel; it's all made out of solar panels.
Oh, wow.
So it's serving two purposes: covered
Yeah.
parking and as well as being a solar system. So I'm seeing that for homes as well. They're trying to build parking canopies for your driveway. I'm seeing solar shingles, which are being built into the roof. So to the untrained eye, you may not know that it's a.
I love that.
Right?
That's perfect.
And they look really neat. Solar panels don't like being hot, so building them into the roof makes them a little warmer. So there's some stuff that you've got to worry about there or think of there, and how it turns the solar power into usable power. Like I said, you need inverters, so how does that all work? And
Right.
so people are still trying to hone that in and perfect it, but there are companies out there.
They're working. I want windows, solar panel windows. Like, come on. I think that would be like the easiest, right? Because it's like, normally in a house, like, you've got the windows like all over the place, right? So I think it would be like, I don't know, I just feel like it'd be more efficient.
Yeah, I've seen it. It does exist. I think it's costly and not all that efficient in comparison to the other ways of doing solar. So it's not widely used. But if you were to ask me, like, where do I think the market's going in the next 10 years? I think we're going to see more of
the
that.
windows?
Yeah. Granted, it's not going to be infinitely more efficient. You're not going to put one panel up there and it's going to cover the whole neighborhood. I think it's going to be comparably efficient as it is today. But people are going to get more creative with how they work it into existing building materials. Roofs,
I definitely agree. I think, it's, to me, it's more appealing, right? It's like what you said, the parking canopy and just having, material on the roof that, because I think for some people it's that aesthetic aspect of it. I think, what can I say? They want sexy, solar panels. So I'm glad to hear that, there's actually people that are working on that. Again, technology is constantly evolving. So, so now let's talk about the not so fun part of this, which is the financial piece, right? Because everybody's like, "Oh, wow, that's fantastic, that's great," but hold on, how much does this cost? So, for someone who's doing this residential house, what is the average cost?
We in the industry, and I absolutely hate this, but talk about these things in dollars per watt. Which means nothing to the
right. I just want my final bill. What is my final bill? Right.
So it varies, obviously. So the higher your utility bill, the more solar panels you're going to need. So the more costly the whole system's going to be. So I've seen solar systems, and it's kind of a crummy answer, but I've seen solar systems cost as low as 10,000 or even lower, and as high as 110,000. So it varies greatly in cost. And like I said, that scale is dependent on how much you need, how much power you need. But the name of the game is it cheaper to go solar than the other alternative, which is pay the utility bill?
Right.
And the answer these days is usually yeah. And that's what local companies do for you, is they look at your utility bill and they check your roof and they do all that fun stuff and they see, is it cheaper to go solar or not?
Right.
Now, you might want to go solar if it's more expensive just because it's the green thing to do and you want to save the planet, but most people are doing it to save money.
Right.
So usually what you do is you get a loan for it. And that's the one thing, like I said, the technology hasn't changed much over the last 10 years, but the financing solutions have. So instead of having to come out of pocket, you can go and get a solar specific loan, and then your loan payment is lower than your utility bill would have been otherwise. Or you can rent them, so you don't even have to own them, so you can pay a lease payment.
Right.
Or you can buy the power at a discount, so you have no money out of pocket day one, and you're paying, instead of $100 a month, you're paying half that or whatever it might be. So there's a bunch of different ways to finance it, and the short answer is, if I were to show you for your house what the bill would be to just buy the panels, it's not going to be nothing. It's going to be, like I said, it varies, but it's usually in the tens of thousands.
Right.
But yeah, the name of the game is to have it be cheaper after you go solar versus before.
And you are saving money on your electric bill while saving the planet at the same time, right? But I think the biggest thing is also too is when you're looking at, let's say, something that's 10,000, what you've got to look at it is the investment and the long-term investment that you have, right? So yeah, you might pay the 10,000, but in the end, you probably potential savings of energy, it's going to be, way over what you pay.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're paying your utility bill, you're never going to pay it off. So you're going to pay them next month, the month
Right.
after that. It's not like one day the
They
utilities
keep coming.
they're not going to call you one day and say, "Oh, you're done. Like you've paid all the amount of money you needed to." When with solar, eventually you'll own that system, and then you have no more utility bills or loan payments. So it is an investment, and then when you're buying it instead of renting it, you're usually looking at different options and how long it takes to pay off. And I've seen solar systems pay for themselves in as low as a handful of years, 5 or so years, and sometimes 10 years or so. But at some point, they do pay for themselves. So unlike, like I said, the alternative, just paying the utility, you never pay them off.
Right, right. So, as I drive around, I see a lot of, new construction, right? Whether it's like townhomes or single family homes or apartment buildings. Do you think that, a lot of these builders, should be working with companies like yourself, BlueWave, and hey, just do it right as you finish completing your construction project?
For sure. Over the years, that's sort of been the nut that's hard to crack, is working with builders. It's a lot cheaper to do it at the same time as you're building, and I've done that over the years where I've worked with builders, and you have to get the wires from the roof where the panels are down to where your utility panel is, which is usually in the basement. And it's a lot cheaper to do that if the walls are still open,
right?
Versus having to kind of feed the wires through the walls later. When you're putting them on the roof, if there's already shingles up there or whatever roofing material, you've got to install the hooks and the anchors and all that fun stuff around the existing roofing material. It's a lot cheaper and more efficient and easier to do it before the roof goes on.
Right.
If you can connect all the solar racking that I was talking about earlier. So it would be great if all the builders, kind of when you were setting up the house, had the solar option. You can check the box and they install it at the same time for sure.
Do you work with new home construction teams?
Not as often as I'd hoped. And like I've been trying to do that for years and years and years, and I'm not the only one. I think the solar industry has always been trying to align themselves with the construction world. But we do sometimes. Yeah.
Right.
And I work with a lot of real estate groups that own a lot of like apartment buildings and things. And those folks, if they're not building those apartment buildings today, if they have older buildings, are now retrofitting the roofs with the solar panels and stuff. So I've got a project right now that's it's thousands of solar panels that this real estate group decided to install, and they're doing that on a lot of their buildings to bring them into the 21st century and have them produce clean energy. But a majority of what we do on rooftops is not new builds. I'd like to see the industry head in that direction. So all new builds have to have solar or have the option to. And there are states that are requiring that and things, and there is policy that's trying to force that conversation and have builders integrate this from day one.
Yeah, I think that would be the best option because, as you're selecting, hey, do I want stainless steel appliances or do I want wood appliances? It's like, a box that says, yes, I want solar panels. It seems like something that should be a no-brainer for construction companies to work, with any solar panel companies. Like I said, it makes sense and it's cheaper for homeowners. Versus doing it after you already have like an existing home. So I hope that's something that, down the road it gets integrated.
Yeah, I think we'll see that. Yeah, I think over the next 10 years, if builders don't get wise and just start doing this on their own, I think we're going to see policy to force the building community into that, in that direction. So I think we have seen some momentum. Like I said, I not as much as I'd like, but we have seen some momentum over the last handful of years.
Yeah, and I think it'll also be better because when you're getting the loan, you can incorporate the solar panels into it, right? It's you won't have to worry about it later. Everything is already included, and you're already paying for it. And boom, it's there once it's completed, right? So I'm just thinking again of the financial piece of it and how to save money, and also too, being somebody who practiced real estate before, this is great also for real estate agents to negotiate, especially when they're dealing with new construction builds for their clients, because you can negotiate incorporating those solar panels in there.
Yeah, for sure. And when I'm looking, I just bought a house not that long ago. When I was looking, I looked a lot more kindly on the homes that had solar on them Unfortunately, the house I bought didn't have solar,
Right.
so I've got to put it on myself. But if I'm looking at two homes and for all intents and purposes they're equal, but one has a utility bill and one doesn't, one comes
Right.
with solar panels, the one that comes with no utility bill is more attractive. So, integrating it into the house is from a real estate perspective is definitely a good investment as well.
Yeah, and you know what, just as we talked about earlier, I mean, these gas prices are crazy, right? I mean, even going food shopping, it's every time you go, it's like a nice surprise. It's like, oh my God, another $2 extra. So I think, we're seeing also a lot of homeowners just trying to figure out ways to be more efficient and save money. And I think looking at, the green technology, I'm seeing a lot of people who are doing that. And on top of that, who are also, you mentioned agriculture earlier, seeing a lot of people now who are also doing some gardening, utilizing their land. So there's so many ways people are going to be efficient.
Yeah, utility bills, electric bills haven't gone down in my recollection. So and they're these days going up fast. So it's a good way to take ownership of that and not be susceptible or exposed to rate increases. My bill, I think, doubled or something over the last a couple of years. So it's a good way to really own that and not have to be exposed to that going forward.
Yeah, and so what's next for BlueWave? I mean, is there anything you can tell us before we wrap up that you guys are working on?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of really interesting things. So what's kind of getting me out of bed in the morning and getting me excited these days are the dual-use agrivoltaic things. So integrating this with research around what can grow underneath solar panels and really how to work with the land. And in addition to that, we're doing battery storage as well. So when let's say it's 90 degrees tomorrow and everyone turns on their AC, when that happens, you normally have to have peaker plants turn on, and it's really a really expensive way to produce on-demand power, and it's usually pretty dirty too. It's usually oil or coal or something like that, natural gas. So we have these batteries dispersed all throughout the grid, and then when people need power on demand, you can discharge the batteries. And it's a lot more cheap and clean, and you can even power them from solar power as well, and we're doing that as well. So,
oh, wow.
So people think of the solar industry and they're thinking, having solar panels all spread out, but we also do battery storage as well.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I mean, again, the industry is always changing. It's a hot market right now. We're seeing also an increase of startup companies that are, trying to create green tech tools. So, and you guys are right here in this space, doing pretty well.
Yeah, we're excited. I've been doing this for quite a bit. The solar industry hasn't been around all that long, and I'm one of the old salty dogs in the industry now. So it's been really interesting to see the momentum pick up over the last 5 years, let's call it, and like you said, all these startups really trying to push the envelope. So a lot of folks can say, "Hey, we're doing solar. Let's check that box. We did a good thing." But a lot of these companies are out there saying, "Yes, we're doing solar, but we can do it better, and let's really push the envelope." So it's a really exciting industry to be in for sure.
No, it definitely is. And I also, recently went to a Women Tech Alliance breakfast. And one of the things I'm also seeing about this industry is that there's a shortage of workers, right? You guys are looking for people. And this is one industry that I always tell my network is don't sleep on the solar panel industry. So if you're looking to get into tech, this is definitely one area that you want to take a look into.
Yeah, I consider myself a solar energy recruiter of sorts because I'm always trying to get people into the industry. I've gotten family members of mine and friends of mine into the solar industry, so it's definitely booming. We definitely have more jobs open than we have applicants, so I'd highly recommend folks looking into the industry. And there's a whole host of things you can do, from construction work on the roof or in the fields to building these things to engineers. We need civil electrical engineers. We need people in marketing. We need people doing social media. So there's a whole host of different things you can do while still working for a solar company. And sales, I've worn several hats over the years, and it's sort of a new industry every single year because things are changing so rapidly. So there's always opportunities. I'd highly recommend folks reach out and explore what it's like to work for a solar company.
Now, this has been fantastic. I mean, I've learned so much, the breakdown of the bill. That was fantastic. I needed that, and I'm sure a lot of other people needed that as well. So I really appreciate you coming here and talking to us more about what's going on with BlueWave, the importance of the solar panel industry, and how just green tech sector is explosive right now. Love to have you back. If there's anything new and exciting that comes out, please come back and we'll chat more about it.
I love talking about it. So.
Yeah, no, this was really great. I learned a lot, and this is why I created this show, is not just for me to learn, but for the community to learn. People are not asking the right questions, and that's why I'm here, because I want to ask those questions and get them answers that will get them, a little bit more tech savvy.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem.
Great.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for watching another great episode of Get Tech Smart. Stay tuned for more episodes.